Is Starfield actually good now somehow? Let's find out.
So it's been a long while since we last spoke about Starfield, and boy, have things really changed. In the past year, Bethesda has been steadily ramping up marketing for their next major release, what they are calling the first true Bethesda RPG since Fallout 4. A phrasing that makes a whole lot of sense coming off the back of Fallout 76. While I have
Yeah.
heard plenty of good things about how the game's been updated over the years, there's no question the disastrous
I have played the game. The game is still as of a buggy, useless, lame, adult, bad experience as it was at launch. Do not buy unless you are a beyond reason Fallout fan. Do not play.
state of its 2018 release tarnished the studio's reputation for many people. People who either haven't followed along with the game's progress and improvement, or people who just don't care. Because the game did release in a poor state, Bethesda oversold, underdelivered, and heavily monetized. Post-launch updates be damned. And you know what? I totally get the sentiment. Although I didn't hate 76 personally, I actually quite liked a lot of the multiplayer elements and the shared world stuff that they were doing. There's still no denying it was a bit of a buggy, glitchy, unfinished mess, and in many ways didn't live up.
Well, okay, to be fair, these bugs are no longer around. But every minor bug you ever experienced or ever saw on YouTube from 5 years ago, it's still there. It's still there. Bethesda has done the absolute bare minimum to make this game work. The only people who are playing this game currently are a level like 400, aka people who play this game religiously, and new levels like level 20s, level 30s, and things like that, who are for some reason trying the game because they want a new Fallout game to play, and they decide, hey, I'm gonna pick this up and see what happens, which is horrible
to what people expect from Bethesda. And so to that end, yes, Bethesda does have quite a bit of community goodwill rebuilding to do for a lot of people. And Starfield is their attempt at just that, a return to form as they are claiming. So in my last video, I spent time addressing some of the early concerns I had about Starfield. Primarily in September 2022, we were at the time supposedly nearly a few months away from release, and the gameplay demo they had released raised a
those AI movements, by the way, look like Fallout 76 100%. You know what happens with creatures when they see you? They just start running either in your direction or to the sides. It's the most dullest thing ever. And they still T-pose, by the way. And they constantly switch between being non-aggressive and aggressive.
Few concerns, biggest of which for me really was being what was very clearly poor performance in the gameplay. And I tell you, nothing can kill a gameplay experience more than a constantly fluctuating frame rate. It actually legitimately makes me feel ill, especially in first-person games. And not in the hyperbolic, like, oh, I'm so upset this makes me feel sick kind of way. No. In the honest-to-goodness way that I will feel physically sick with first-person games that do not run at a smooth, consistent frame rate. So yes, for me, performance is a serious, legitimate concern. And that first gameplay trailer
look at that, mud crabs.
Have some really bad inconsistent frame rate, so I was worried about that. But performance aside, because you know that can get addressed with time, I had some other early concerns, like the less than next-gen feeling visuals on display. A lot of what they were showing felt flat and muddy.
You could have seen that the ground looked horrible. Jeez.
Visuals looked still kind of lack a real fidelity that I would hope for from Bethesda's next big game. Although this is a trade-off often made for scale and scope. Speaking of scale and scope, the extent of that is new and could be a concern with Starfield replacing the single, fully realized, entirely handcrafted worlds of a lot of their prior mainline RPGs, replacing that with tons of space, empty space, and mostly barren planets. They've confirmed this actually. There's over 1,000 planets, many of which won't have a lot going on, which, while may be true to like the reality of what you would expect from space exploration, will that make for the most engaging gameplay experience? And then the last major concern really boiled down to Bethesda's new direction as a studio over these past 9 years, with their output consisting of serial re-release.
If something's happening for 9 years, you can't really call that new, I think.
Pieces of Skyrim, an Elder Scrolls phone game, and a live service game in Fallout 76. Across the board, the company has just taken a more modern...
Remember, by the way, how they said you will not be able to buy power or anything like that? It's just gonna be skins. Yeah, that's a lie. That's a lie. So that new game probably gonna have the same shit.
Approach to monetization, and that has me a little bit worried if any of that would seep into Starfield. So those were my 4 kind of main points of initial early.
Also, considering we got this news literally just yesterday, Bethesda is gonna delete your ownership of games if you haven't logged into the Bethesda launcher or that game in a very long time, by the way. And a very long time, I don't know, it's like a year or a couple of months or whatever Bethesda chooses. But yeah, they are gonna delete the games that you bought from your account. Not the account itself, by the way, because, you know, it's better that you log in and buy everything anew than lose the account and then don't make an account, okay? It's insanity.
Concerns about the game from what we'd seen and heard at the time. Things that had me going like, I really hope this gets addressed, that'd be good. So now here we are, 10 months, several new videos and various interviews later, and you know what? I wouldn't say all of my concerns have been eliminated, but I would say a lot of them have at least been relieved to the point where I'm not nearly as worried about them anymore. And now that they've shown a whole lot more of Starfield with that direct, giving us a solid 45-minute showcase of the game, I'm currently thinking that this is in fact going to be the next real Bethesda RPG as they've said it will be. And that is something I'm pretty happy to be wrong about, frankly. I'm looking forward to a new good game. Seems like Starfield may very well be that. I want to touch on all of that, but first a word from today's sponsor. The sponsor of today's video is Rise of Kingdoms. This is an epic cross-platform strategy game that takes players on an immersive journey through various historical eras. In Rise of Kingdoms, you can choose from 14 historical civilizations that actually existed, including the most recent edition, Greece. Available within the first 3 days. Okay, so first let's address the size of Starfield. This is a big game, like a very big game, and a lot of the game and a lot of the play space that we'll spend our time with, most of it in fact, is procedurally generated, and this is a big shift from what their prior mainline RPGs have been known for. They've used procedural generation to assist in the development of these densely packed worlds, but now with so many planets, entire planets that are fully realized, a majority of the game is going to be procedural with the handcrafted stuff placed in certain areas within it. In an interview with
have we not heard that somewhere? Have we not heard the exact same thing from something that rhymes with blam blam? That makes no sense. No Man's Sky. Haven't we heard the exact same thing from No Man's Sky? Admittedly, that game did actually become good after literally 4 years and duping a lot of people out of their money and buying an unfinished piece of shit tier product. I wonder if this is going to be the same. Well, judging by Fallout 76, it's going to be worse.
Kind of funny game.
Again, if they did not actually care to literally fix Fallout 76, I don't know if they will ever care of actually making this game good. Like, I press X to doubt everything that Bethesda is doing. Because we have been hoping for, how long now? How long have we been hoping for something good from Bethesda? And it literally never comes. It literally never comes.
Games. Howard touched on this, and I want to read this quote to you. Obviously, it's procedural because there's no way we're going to handcraft an entire planet. What we do is we handcraft individual locations, and some of those are placed specifically. Obviously, the main cities and other quest locations, and then we have a suite of them that are generated or placed when you land, depending on the planet. So very clearly, how this is going to work is there are going to be specific cities and very important points of interest to the main story quest, to specific side quest in individual locations. They are static. They were all the handcrafted Bethesda uniqueness and very intentionalness that we expect from a Bethesda game. But then we have whole planets, and those whole planets are procedurally generated. The layout of the foliage and the animals on them and the resources you find on them and all of these things are generated, and they've actually talked about how it's actually generated as you approach and you first load into the planet, and then specific parts of those might also be handcrafted. So maybe they set down a particular small city on a planet, and when you come across it, you go there and there are particular NPCs, and they might have you go out on quest to procedural locations, to procedural caves, to procedural outposts, to procedural research facilities. There'll probably be like different categories of types of locations that you can find on the different planets, and then those procedural elements will come into play. And I think that is a fine way to do it, as long as we are able to not feel like we're just getting lost in a mess of procedural nothingness. I feel like that's something that I felt with a lot of games that do procedural generation. And
so the biggest, by the way, fear of this game is going to be very simple, and probably most of you have not thought about this, but games like this suffer from a very, very, very unique and interesting problem. It's the procedural generation part. It's either going to generate the planets way too barren or way too dense with stuff. And either of those is actually bad. You want the sweet spot for this stuff, okay? If the planet is barren, you're wasting your time. You literally spend like an hour exploring it and you have nothing to show for it. Delete the game, go play, I don't know, Diablo 4, I guess. Okay? If the planet is overfilled with stuff on the other side, it's like you're spending 3 days, and yeah, you have got something to show for it, but you experience burnout. Okay, you play on that planet for 3 hours, you're doing stuff. You play for another 3 hours the next day, you're doing kind of the same stuff. And the third day, you're doing literally exactly the same stuff as day 1, day 2, but it's not running out. And every crevice looks like, oh, there could be something new, something interesting, but it's not. It's the same exact shit. And this is what happens when they oversaturate these planets, right? This is what happens when they completely oversaturate everything you experience there. And that burns people out. People get bored, and if they get unlucky, and the next planet is even remotely close to the first planet that they ventured to, well, they're probably gonna go play Diablo 4 or something.
They give us basically endless scale, but it's all random and almost means nothing because of it. You go over a hill, there's more plants, there's more ore to harvest, there's more animals to shoot, but nothing is like really interesting and unique and handcrafted, which again, those things that we expect from Bethesda games. Yep. But we do know there is fast travel. We do know that we can take off and land from anywhere on the planet, and we do know that they're gonna highlight the most important areas, and it just seems like the bulk of the rest of the stuff, although it might make up for a majority of the total play space, like the total surface area, the space out in space, and then the space on the planets, even though a majority of that might just be procedural nothingness, if you will, as long as we're able to quickly and very decisively go to the most important things, and those things are highlighted for us, I think the presence of that isn't a problem. If anything, it just opens up more possibility for the modder scene, right? A couple of other quotes here. It's a difficult design thing. If you add too many things, if it's generating too many abandoned bases or towers or things to find, it starts feeling too gamey in some of those locations. Then saying, we hope everybody enjoys it for what it is, but it is an exploration different than what we've had, where you're landing, you're exploring around that landing spot, and then you're probably going somewhere else. And I think this is probably the key distinction that I was initially hung up on, this idea that in prior Bethesda games, I felt like no matter which direction I picked, I would go somewhere and I would find something very purposefully placed there. And that's just not going to be the reality in a game as big as Starfield with fully realized, fully crafted planets. If you land on a planet and you just head in a direction,
there's nothing there.
You're going to come across a lot of nothing and some randomly placed locations, and that's not going to probably, at least for me, that's not going to be nearly as interesting. And I think that's
not going to be interesting for a lot of people. That's the reality.
Just something we have to come to terms with because of the scale of what they've decided to build for the game here. But again, with fast travel, with being able to take off and land anywhere on any planet, and with
Bro, the NPC literally saw a guy with a gun mow down his friend and then decide, I'm gonna charge him with a wrench. That's gonna be great. Are these all like jet addicts or something like that? What's that? Why are they doing that, Bethesda?
Those markers showing us those key locations, we'll just have to make the mental.
How do you make a pirate without a gun?
Note to not get bogged down and wanting to explore every inch of every planet, because that ain't gonna happen probably in your lifetime. The good news, though, is that in terms of the handcrafted stuff, there's a lot of it. In fact, there seems to be more of it than there ever has been. As he said, as far as the handcrafted content, more than any game we've done. I've stopped giving out numbers, but just in the dialogue, it's more than our last. It is more than Skyrim and Fallout 4 combined. So as we get into locations and art and everything, we've done more of it than we've ever.
That's not a lot, by the way. Fallout 4 doesn't have really that much craftable things, you know, the modding is kind of fun. But Skyrim doesn't have shit for crafting. Like, man, what do you have really for crafting? Like 3 sets or something like that, bruh. Not doesn't sound good.
Ever done. So yes, there will not be a lack of things to do and see. That is for sure. If anything, content bloat is a potential reality. Now let's talk about performance. Like I said, that initial trailer had me personally really concerned because game's performance, like I said, it's a major issue for me. It's a major worry for me, especially if it is a game that I plan and intend to play in first person. Obviously though, in that early gameplay trailer, that was, middle of last year, it's been a full year since, and that was also, even at the time, still many months away from release. It seems like performance is something they've seriously focused on. Even just in the gameplay that they've shown, there looked to be a marked improvement in the regular consistent performance from what we had seen, and they've talked about as much in various interviews. With the delay of Starfield, and when talking about what they had done in the time since then, Todd said that they've spent most of the year playing the game a ton over and over, making sure it is of course balanced, it's as fun as—
yes, Todd Howard, the guy who doesn't lie at all and is known for saying the truth and just the truth and only the truth. Yeah, this is a lie, obviously. I don't know a game developer studio, by the way, that is AAA that actually plays its games. Like, when was the last time you played a AAA studio's game and said, wow, the developers actually played this thing because they're not experiencing any blatantly obvious issues that any normal person would instantaneously bring up in the first 5 minutes of playing the game? Yeah, doesn't happen now, does it?
As possible, honing the systems and the interfaces, and then, he said, obviously bug fixing and all of those things, performance, and really getting it to where we're really sure and solid on what we're putting out there for everybody. Performance is something they're focused on, even to the detriment of a high frame rate, because in another interview with IGN, Todd revealed that the game will in fact be locked at 30 frames per second on console, primarily because they want to ensure high fidelity, high resolution, and a consistent frame rate. So while the game can go above 30 FPS on consoles, they want to make sure that it just stays there and isn't dipping down, isn't fluctuating. So
did we just see a giant dinosaur get meleeed and staggered by the melee by a human? I think we did.
Not like 50 a lot of the time, then drop it down to 40. Not personally my favorite. I am definitely in preference of giving people more options, giving the consumer more options for how they want to experience the game, although they do clearly have a set thing that they're going for. They want the game to look a certain way, they want the game to run in a certain resolution, so they have opted out of going for what is often offered on consoles as the performance mode. That's just not going to be there. I suppose, at least fortunately for those of us on PC, looks like we are going to have more options. We won't be capped at 30 frames.
Admittedly, the good part is obviously I'm saying the NPCs look horrible, but it's the shooting part that honestly matters. If the NPCs just run at you and try to melee you with guns, that's not an issue as long as the shooting feels fun.
Per second, and again, for me, that makes me quite happy. Although honestly, I will take a capped frame rate, even if it is lower than I would prefer, than to have a constantly fluctuating frame rate. Performance, it's something they're thinking about. It's something that they have been working on with this delay, and it is something that they are definitely taking seriously. Does that mean that this game is going to launch without performance issues, without bugs and glitches? Oh, I mean, absolutely not. What Bethesda game has? Not one in my recollection, at least not in my personal play experience. Every Bethesda game I played at release, it was a bit messy, and I expect this will be the same. I just hope it isn't too bad, I suppose, is my main thing, for all of the reasons that I've talked about before. Now, in terms of visuals, I do still think many of, specifically the outdoor areas, look a bit washed out. I guess my main thing at this point is I'm unsure if that's just largely due to the way they've done things like the lighting and the atmospheric effects, or what may very well be the case if it has more to do with YouTube, like the way YouTube does its encoding. A lot of videos with any of these fine granular atmospheric or particle effects can just turn into like a blocky, crappy looking mess. I know a lot of times I will watch a gameplay of a game on YouTube and it looks way worse than it does when I'm actually sitting in front of my computer and playing it. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, really, that is the case for a lot of those outdoor areas that I don't think look that great. Even in spite of that, all of the indoor areas look fantastic. And I did think that back in that initial trailer that they showed, that 12-minute gameplay kind of first look, that has been reiterated most recently with the Direct. I think the indoor areas, the fidelity there, the clarity there, absolutely on point. I think it looks really good. So I'm really happy with that. We'll have to see how those outdoor areas hold up. But also, ultimately, thinking it through more, I understand that a trade-off in visuals is part of what comes with the sort of scale that they're going with. And also, graphics just don't make a game at all.
Good,
I've played plenty of games with what we would consider not good graphics that I've really, really enjoyed. And I think especially for something like a Bethesda game, with the kind of clockwork nature of its universe, with how they handle physics, world, and item interaction, I think it's okay if the graphics are just a little bit lower. Like, yeah, this doesn't look like a UE5 game, but because it's not. It's a creation engine game. They've modified their engine. They've updated their engine. It's clearly better than it was in Skyrim, better than it was in Fallout 4. No.
Imagine everyone's raving about the Unreal 5 engine changing gaming forever, and Bethesda. It's like, guys, look at the look at the Bethesda engine. Do you mean that dog with the 15-meter long neck? Is that supposed to impress me, Bethesda? That's not intentional. Your engine's not doing very well. And why is it crawling? Is it supposed to do that? I thought it's a running engine, but it's crawling. What's going on?
Starfield does not have cutting-edge visuals. I think it's looked better than I had initially thought, though, with the more that I've seen. I think the indoor areas look great. And yes, ultimately, it's not game-breaking for me, because it isn't the most important thing. The gameplay, the experience, the world, that is. And then finally, let's talk about monetization. Like I said, Bethesda has about 10 years of just like re-releasing Skyrim, putting out phone games, putting out the live service game Fallout 76, and pushing more in the direction of like modern-day monetization, especially with their live service game. Well, as we get closer to release here for Starfield, we've got a clear picture of what their monetization plans will be like. The obvious is here, of course. There is a base box price. You can pay extra money to get extra stuff. So the standard edition is going to be available with just the game for $69.99. The pre-order one comes with some bonus stuff. And then there's a bunch of bonus stuff for the edition above that. The premium edition, they're selling those 5 days early access. I hate to see it. They're selling Shattered Space Story expansion that will be available upon release. They got a skin pack there as well as a digital art book and original sound.
Yep, seems like classic Bethesda. Please give us all your money. Please give us all your money, I mean.
Soundtrack. And then they're going all the way up to $300, $299.99. Get you all of that stuff before it, as well as this credit.
This is literally every Bethesda game in the last, I don't know how many years, honestly. Like, look at this. This is probably not going to work properly. This is going to be made out of cardboard. The book is going to miss pages. Digital game download. No idea what this is. A classic sticker because you're a stupid child. Oh, it's a watch case. Do you think they are giving you the sticker so you can stick it here because that's where it's intended to be? So they, they create the illusion of giving you more. Dude, this is classic Bethesda garbage. Jesus Christ. This is gonna be duffel bag 2.0, you know? It's gonna be wild. This watch is probably not gonna work. It's probably gonna die in like 5 minutes of being used.
Stick with a laser etched game code on it, just kind of something to sit on your shelf. And then the Starfield Chrono Watch, in case, I'll be honest with you, this is actually kind of cool. I'm not going to be dishing out $300 for it, but the super fans, I understand it.
It's not gonna work. That watch probably costs like cents. Bethesda probably found some random guy in India selling cheap watches and they're like, oh my, we struck gold.
Like your game-related stuff, this is kind of cool game-related stuff. At least it's actually something functional, right? Like if this is a watch, that's fine. It's not for me, but that's fine. Probably the biggest standout here is I don't love when they sell early access. I don't love pushing into the pressure of FOMO of, oh, you get to pay five days early if you spend the extra money. I don't love that. It's just kind of par for the course here. What am I going to do about it personally? I complain about it. That's what I'm doing. I don't love it. It's here though. So, and I mean, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but yes, they already have expansions in the works. If you buy that premium edition, you get basically, you're pre-ordering the story expansion.
Let's go. The game's not even finished. They're already pumping out expansions because who's going to finish it?
If you've even played the game, you can pre-order the story expansion. I mean, I know they've bundled it all up, but I just find it kind of funny. It is worth noting there was kind of a bit of discussion around the fact that according to the game's rating, when it was officially rated, it was stated that the game would have have in-game purchases. Now, it's important to keep in mind this, yes, of course, could refer to microtransactions and a cash shop and things like that. But it also could certainly very likely be referring to the Creation Club content that they're likely to have, and or any DLC expansions, which we already know that there's a story expansion in the works. So it could also very well be.
If there is a cent to be had, Bethesda is gonna try and do its best to get it.
Referring to that. Now, according to Todd, probably unsurprisingly, they do plan to support this game post-release. It's not a live service game, but they're going to be releasing new content for sale. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm just happy we're not dealing with another live service game. And I know I like live service games. I cover a lot of live service games. I cover MMOs. I cover the shared world.
I see no problem with Bethesda just lying about that. And it turns out it is a live... Wait, it is a live service game. It's gonna have an always online thing because you need to be always online to buy shit in the shop. It's gonna be yeah, there's no way this is not an always online game. You can't buy stuff from the shop if you're not online.
Games. I cover a lot of these games that have the season pass, that have the in-game cash shop. It's because I love the structure of those games and the multiplayer nature and the regular updates of those games, but I don't love the monetization. Even though I understand that is part of what keeps those engines churning. I get that's why we are where we are with how that monetization is done, even if a lot of companies maybe probably push it a little further than they need in the name of profits, because that's what they're here for. They're here to make profits. So they'll do what they can until they piss off their player base, even in spite of pissing off their player base. Doesn't matter. If they're making money and we're still buying the games, they don't really give a crap. But yes, as much as I do play and enjoy those games, I enjoy them in spite of how that monetization is done, especially when it's aggressively pushed in your face and you're constantly seeing the shop and you're constantly asked to buy these upgrades and you're constantly reminded of the new purchases. I enjoy those games in spite of those elements. I am just so happy to be getting games that aren't going to be full of that crap. The games that are just games, like I talked about in another video, I like a game that feels like it's...
How can you say that knowing it's a Bethesda game? It's like seeing, oh my god, there's a new FIFA, Madden, NHL, or whatever game, and then you buy it and you're disappointed. Hey, wait, this is exactly the same thing as last year. In fact, there hasn't been a single improvement in these games for the past 10 years. And being surprised by it.
It's just a game. And and as the time goes on, I get more and more of the sense, besides the monetization, that Starfield is going to be a game that just feels like a damn game. It doesn't feel like a service. It doesn't feel like something trying to reach its hand over through the screen into my pocket and pull some cash back towards the publisher, right? And that's probably the thing I want to wrap up with here the most, talking about those concerns that I've had and how a lot of it has been alleviated, although not completely eliminated. I'm just happy that as we've seen more of Starfield and as they've released more videos, I think specifically that Starfield Direct, it showcased so many awesome features and systems, and just what they've shown of the game have left me pretty pumped to jump in and play. I think the combat's looking really good. We got a lot of weapon customization, different things you can change. You got the different melee options. Combat, they've said, is more dynamic, and they've updated the animation system. It's all more fluid, and I would agree with that quote. I think it looks to be very much so that. They've also got cool elements, like with the gravity on different planets affecting the actual combat, affecting like the ballistics. Like in 0G combat, firing a ballistic weapon will physically push you backwards, but energy weapons won't. I think there's a lot of different cool elements that play with combat, that in conjunction with the skills.
Are we talking about, by the way, the same energy weapons where a mining laser is pinpoint accurate, but a laser gun goes literally everywhere but where you're aiming?
System and the customization that can come through that and how you can tailor your character. This all looks pretty cool. I don't think I've seen a lot, or at least I haven't in my research seen a lot, but I hope they do something with the gear and stuff you can find, weapons with like different abilities. Speaking of which, part of that showcase, we saw what looked like space magic. Yo, go all in on that. Just give me all the space magic. That would be super dope. Space flights in the game, so that's cool. We got the outpost and customization that comes through that. There's the
do space magic and call it nanos.
Companion system. There's the ship customization. It's just crazy. Like, you can make, like, what is this, like Megatron or something? I don't know, Transformers, but stuff that you can make in this game, look, like, it's just really, really cool. I think there's a lot of cool things about this game, and as we've seen and learned more, I am just that much more excited.
Space punk.
And I'll wrap up by saying, I think there's a very good chance we're gonna have performance issues and we're gonna have bugs.
Hey, at least the space punks have guns, unlike the space pirates who go for you with a wrench.
That may still very well be a serious concern when it comes to release, because that is just part and parcel, it seems, with a lot of these Bethesda mainline games. But the other concerns I had ultimately have either been addressed or, upon second thought, I think just don't matter, because it seems like this is going to be a good game. And that is really what it boils down to. We are
cool,
still
though.
At this point now. I said this, like, whatever, it doesn't matter when I said it. It seemed for the longest time like, oh man, nobody makes games like Bethesda. Like, they still have this unique hold on this particular type of experience. I'm not saying there aren't other open world games, because there are plenty of other open world games. I'm not saying there aren't large games. There are plenty of those. But the way Bethesda makes these games and the type of worlds they craft and the interactivity and the immersiveness of it all, they are still in a league of their own when it comes to this particular type of open world RPG. And it seems like that is going to continue here with Starfield. And I think that is what has left me so excited.
Make shitty games, be in a league of your own. Now that's a 10 out of 10 banger.
And so happy to be wrong about my early concerns, or at least to no longer be worried about my early concerns. So with that, yes, I am happy to say I was wrong about Starfield, and I think that's pretty great. Because that would mean that there's going to be a good game to play.
Force, I think you're so wrong on this one. I ain't gonna lie. I think this is the highest cope video you have done in a long time.
Hopefully that means there's going to be a good game to play. Looking forward to it. We are not too far away from release. And this...
Well, again, that was Force Gaming. I think he's absolutely huffing that copium like there is no tomorrow. I think he just wants this game to be good. I can't blame him. I have been in that position, and I'm pretty sure you also have been in that position. But man, does this sound like Cope Haven right there. He's going to sleep with a Cope mask on, and he's waking up, he's literally eye dropleting in liquefied Cope. My man is gonna probably have a rude and sad awakening. It is what it is. You can't expect good from Bethesda, and there's a good reason why. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.